Hey friends, welcome back to another Seed Talk with Lisa, Layne, and we have Tucker even today.
Oh,
And so glad to be here. Hey Layne.
hi, how are you doing?
I am good. I have Tucker scouring the floors here as we're recording. So we have a trio going on today.
Oh, good.
So, friends, we're so glad that you're back here today. And I just want to remind everybody why we're here, right? This whole podcast was Layne's idea based on all of the questions that the Gardener's Workshop receives about our seeds that we sell. Questions on starting them and, how to do it and troubleshooting. And so Layne and I started doing Seed Talk over on our sister podcast, Field and Garden. And then it became so popular that we thought we would do a standalone podcast. And here we are, Layne. What is this, like the 40th episode or so? Or
Yeah, I think it's like 41, which is amazing.
Okay.
I can't believe it.
I know. So I'm just saying, y'all, that, we all love starting seeds and every seed is unique and every seed needs what it needs to sprout, and to not hesitate to ask questions. Layne loves answering questions. We're just really happy about how people are so receptive, and we love it when you share this with your friends because we feel like it is a key ingredient to helping people be successful, right, Layne?
Yes, I agree. And we love doing it, right, Lisa?
Yeah.
It's fun.
It is fun, and we've learned things, I mean, it's really, really fun. So I just wanted to remind everybody of where Seed Talk kind of grew out, sprouted from. How is that?
Oh, cute.
Yeah. So anyway, so you can learn more about the work that we do. Layne is the seed manager for our business, which is just growing. Layne and I sit down to like maybe discontinue some seeds that aren't good sellers, trying to cut our line back a little bit. And Layne, how did that work out last time?
Not too well.
Not too well. That's right. We brought on more new ones than we did get rid of old ones. So anyway, we're doing our best. So you can learn more about the work that we're doing over at thegardenersworkshop.com. So Layne, what are we going to talk about today?
So today we're going to be talking about marigolds, but something very specific about marigolds, and that is the marigold fragrance. So some people like the fragrance, some people don't mind it. And then on the other end of the spectrum, some people don't like it or they're sensitive to it. So we're going to talk about how to kind of manage that scent if it's something that you don't want there. And also we're going to talk about two varieties that we really like that are unique, not just because they have a reduced scent, but also their coloration is pretty unique. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
I'm super excited because I think that marigolds played a huge role here on my farm, particularly during our supermarket bouquet production years. And super happy to talk about this.
Yes. Okay, let's get started.
Yeah.
And I should also mention that we're talking about Tagetes erecta today, which are also known as African marigolds or American or Aztec marigolds.
Yes.
All right. So Lisa, why were marigolds such an important crop for your farm?
So, I grow primarily annuals, so I really explored all annuals available to me to grow out in my urban farm. And marigolds, of course, were one of those. And as I started to investigate marigolds, I found out two things. One is they're super tall, they're super big blooms, and in addition to that, they last a super long time in the vase. Like they will literally root. Right. And so both of those qualities, having different colors as well as long lasting and really great summer growers, they became a big part of our farm.
Yeah. And I like them too in a home garden setting for all the reasons you just mentioned, but also because of their strong scent, oftentimes they're not quite as appealing to deer. I still do have some issues, but they tend to leave them mostly alone.
Yeah.
That may or may not be your experience, but it is worth a try if you have deer issues.
For sure.
Marigolds have really pretty sort of fern-like foliage that looks great out in the landscape. And they also have a long bloom time and bloom well even into the fall.
I can remember one year that we grew so many yellow and orange marigolds. I mean, this was back when we were in high production. I literally went out the day before Halloween and cut gobs of yellow and orange little shorties and made little bouquets to give. And I
Oh,
wasn't sure kids would want them. Let
yeah.
me tell you something. We had kids coming like an hour later from other neighborhoods that had heard about our Halloween bouquets.
Oh, how cute.
Yes.
Okay, so speaking of holidays, did you ever do anything with Day of the Dead? I know for some farmers, that's a really big marigold holiday for their farm.
Yeah, I did not, but we do have a lot of flower farming friends, particularly like the Arnowskis in Texas. They are like the godfather and mother of all flower farmers, right? Well, they're down in Texas and they do. I mean, I think he plants, I think I might be right when I say 100,000 marigolds
Oh,
just for
wow.
that celebration because I mean he's right on the border of Mexico and that's just a very popular holiday there, right? A very well celebrated. So but I never had a request for that.
So, in case anyone doesn't know, Day of the Dead is a holiday that's celebrated in Mexican culture and some other cultures as well to honor and remember and celebrate loved ones that they have lost. And marigolds are kind of the iconic flower for that holiday. And I wanted to read a couple of quotes from an NPR article about why marigolds are so important for that holiday. So, the first quote is the fragrance of the bright orange and yellow flowers is said to lead souls from their burial place to their family homes. And another quote was, if you believe what the Aztecs believed, then your ancestors need the scent to find their way back to you.
Oh
So
my goodness.
I just thought that was a sweet little quote and some information about why marigolds and how the scent plays into their importance for that Day of the Dead holiday.
Exactly. So they're not interested in the low fragrance marigolds.
Right. Possibly not. So how would you describe the classic marigold scent, Lisa? And I went outside today and was trying to rub some of our marigold foliage to see if I could come up with a description, and they just smell like marigolds to me.
Exactly. I was just sitting here thinking, it's like, well, they smell like marigolds. You have to
Yeah.
smell it. It's just it's pretty strong when you're in a closed in room with them. You know, when I used to
Right.
deliver and had buckets and buckets and buckets of marigolds or buckets of mixed bouquets that had a strong presence, and I had to drive 45 minutes away. I mean, it was very intoxicating. And so, yeah, they have to smell it for themselves.
Yes. So do you personally mind the scent, or do you like the scent?
Well, because I have such terrible allergies, I can tell. I mean, I don't mind them here in the building, you know, I mean, because when we have a lot of buckets of a particular crop like stock, which has such a strong fragrance, it really, when there's a bunch in here, it bothers me. Marigolds don't affect me that same way. But one or two stems and a mixed bouquet, I can do inside my house.
Yeah, I agree. I actually like the fragrance of marigolds, and it brings back memories of planting out marigolds in the garden when I was a child. So, did you ever have customers complain about the scent of marigolds in your bouquets? We're going to talk about a little tip in just a minute for how to reduce or eliminate that. But did you ever have any complaints about that?
Sure. Well, it's not even so much complaints as just a general statement. So I had two different kinds of customers. We had commercial customers and retail customers. Commercial customers, primarily florists, were very familiar with marigolds and their fragrance. And I knew which customers either said, oh my gosh, we love marigold fragrance. You know, I knew that they totally embraced that fragrance and they bought tons. And then I had another customer who, because he had a complaint about marigold foliage, you know, that totally makes him never want to use it again. And I understand that because it was a high risk, right? So we knew how to take the fragrance out of his bouquets if and when he ever ordered them. And we also took that step for our supermarket bouquets most often so that we did not offend somebody.
Okay, let's go into this tip that we have. So, where is the marigold scent primarily concentrated in the plant in terms of flowers versus foliage? And then, what is the trick for reducing or eliminating that scent?
Sure. So in my experience, the fragrance is basically 100% on the foliage. And I don't think any of us knew that. I mean, I didn't know that back then, right? Or at least if this flower does have any fragrance, it is so minute compared to the foliage. So,
Right.
I'm not sure about that. But we learned, because the marigold flowers are so big, so bright, and last so long, it is worth totally just stripping the entire stem. So you just have a stem and a flower. If you need focal flowers for mixed bouquets, that is a huge help. Takes a little longer to do it, but if you're hungry for flowers, it's very, very doable. And we love marigold in bouquets because of their structure. They contribute a lot to help build the bouquet. And we've even stripped the foliage off of side shoots. If it depends on how desperate we are for flowers,
Yeah.
but we are very quick to just strip the foliage for anyone that makes that statement. And back to who, if we've had customer complaints, our retail customers, like at farmers markets or here at our private on farm private market, people would say, "Oh, I don't like marigolds." So Suzanne, and we say, "Why?" They say, "Because of the smell." We say, "Well, we have some over here that are already stripped. See what you think. They don't really have fragrance." And some people would take them. So the stripping of the foliage is very liberating.
Right. And so you would just kind of base that on a customer to customer basis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to talk about two marigold cultivars that are unique, as I mentioned before, because they have a reduced scent. So the first one I wanted to talk about is a beautiful one that I know Lisa and I both love. And this is called White Swan. It has 2 to 3 inch blooms. It's about 28 to 36 inches tall, and it's 65 to 75 days to bloom. And this is a hybrid, and the flowers are this gorgeous cream color.
Yes. I mean, I definitely call it buttercream.
Right.
And it definitely it changes as it develops. So it just really depends on what stage you actually cut it in. And it's the first marigold to bloom for us. It actually just started blooming, and we probably got 2 or 3 different varieties planted all at the same time. And White Swan is the first one to show up every time.
It is very fast to mature. Again, only around 65 to 75 days to bloom for White Swan. And this actually has substantially less marigold fragrance than the traditional varieties. It's not eliminated completely, but it's reduced.
I just call it low fragrance marigold.
Right. Low fragrance.
Yeah.
Right. Perfect way to describe it.
The other thing that I really like about it is when it's immature, it has a green center. So that's like icing on the cake.
How pretty. Okay, and speaking of green, the next one is Nocento Lime Green. And Nocento, it is what it sounds like. So this is a very reduced scent. It has, again, 2 to 3 inch blooms, 26 to 32 inches tall, a little bit longer days to bloom than the White Swan, 80 to 95. And it's also a hybrid. And the color of this one starts off as a really fresh lime green that softens to yellow as the flower ages.
Yeah. And, I also cut those really early on because they have such a strong lime green presence.
Yes.
But that color kind of changes as they mature.
Yeah. So of the two, Nocento has less fragrance than White Swan.
Yes. And I also want to say, because they are both very light colored flowers, we practice really harvesting them earlier than later because of potential pest damage, putting spots or somebody eating part of the blooms, because we know that marigolds are a favorite of Japanese beetles. And I will say that I found that the Nocento was the first attacked. I think the lack of fragrance. I mean, I don't know what attracts Japanese beetles to marigolds, but apparently it's not just the fragrance, because they were all over our Nocentos. So those were our first to start hand picking those boogers, the Japanese beetles, off.
And I have also read that Japanese beetles can be more attracted to certain flower colors, and that these lighter colored marigolds seem to be more attractive to them a lot of times. So that may explain some of what you're seeing as well. And something else that I have noticed, I mentioned before that because of the strong fragrance on the foliage of traditional marigolds, a lot of people find them to be deer resistant. You may experience more deer problems on these lower scent varieties. I know for myself, if I plant the traditional types out, they tend to get left alone more or less. They still get nibbled on a little, but I'm still able to get flowers. If I plant something like white swan out there, they will be wiped out entirely. Have you found that deer are any more interested in these varieties?
I think that these varieties are so buried amongst so many our volume of our other marigolds that they just don't even realize they're in there.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yes. Well, it's just a consideration. Maybe do an experiment before you go all in if you have deer issues.
Yeah.
And again, that's just my experience. Your experience may be entirely different from that. So you did mention that these lighter varieties are more prone to showing pest damage and other damage from being out in the garden. So what stage do you tend to harvest these two varieties?
I find that as soon as the buds begin to open, they will hold up. You know, some flowers have a really wobbly stem until it gets really mature. I haven't found that to really be the case with marigolds. And so we tend to harvest marigolds early in the stage because they do continue to develop. So I mean, it's when they're big enough to make an impact in a mixed bouquet, is when we start cutting them. And so it's soon after the buds just start, the petals, I guess, start opening up. But I particularly like them when they're immature, when that green of these two particularly, because they have that green center, which just makes them especially useful.
Yes. Now, would you also strip the foliage off these two lower fragrance varieties if you were selling to some of those customers that don't like the fragrance, or would you give it a try leaving it on?
I think I would do a test with them and say, what do you think? And let them decide.
All right. Well, that was our episode for today. We hope that you liked that little tip about eliminating marigold fragrance if that's something that you don't want in your bouquets. And we hope you enjoyed learning about the beautiful and less fragrant white swan and nocento lime green marigolds as well. So thank you so much for joining us. Remember to leave us a rating or review in a podcast app and a like and comment over on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe either so you won't miss any of our episodes.
So friends, until we meet again, bye Layne.
Bye.
Ciao.